As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in pale gold, Evelyn finally slept, her breathing slow and even. Samuel watched her, worry gnawing at his gut. He'd seen fear before. Fear of hunger, of drought, of men with guns and nothing to lose. But this was different. This was the kind of fear that came from knowing something no one else believed. He stood, stretching the stiffness from his back, and stepped outside. The world was quiet, the grass silver with dew. He walked the perimeter of the house, checking for tracks, but found nothing. Still, the feeling of being watched lingered, prickling the back of his neck. When he returned, Evelyn was awake, sitting up on the sofa, her eyes clearer, but still wary. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not leaving me out there." Samuel poured her a cup of coffee, added a little sugar, and handed it to her. "You want to tell me what happened?" She stared into the cup, her hands trembling. "I was running. From them, from the curse. My family, we've been haunted for generations. Every time someone tries to leave, it follows. My father thought he could break it, but he died trying. I thought if I could get far enough, maybe it would end with me." Samuel listened, the weight of her words settling over him like a shroud. "What kind of curse?" Evelyn looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Something buried. Something evil. My great-grandfather found it when he was digging the well. He brought it into the house, thinking it was just an old relic. But after that, nothing was ever right. People got sick. Animals died. My mother said it was the land itself, angry at being disturbed." Samuel frowned, remembering stories his own father used to tell, tales of old bones and restless spirits, of things best left alone. He never believed them, not really. But looking at Evelyn, he wondered if maybe there was more truth in those stories than he'd thought. "Where is it now?" he asked. Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "Under the floorboards. In the root cellar. I try to bury it deeper, but it always comes back." Samuel stood, determination hardening his features. "Show me." Evelyn hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. But she nodded, pushing herself to her feet. Together, they crossed the creaking floor to the trapdoor in the kitchen. Samuel lifted it, the hinges groaning in protest, and helped Evelyn down the narrow steps. The cellar was cold and damp, the air thick with the smell of earth and old secrets. In the far corner, half buried in the dirt, was a small wooden box, its surface carved with strange symbols. Evelyn pointed, her hand shaking. "That's it. That's where it started." Samuel knelt beside the box, studying the markings. He felt a chill run through him, as if the air itself had turned to ice. "What do we do?" he asked. Evelyn's answer was simple, but her voice trembled. "Go deeper. Bury it where no one will ever find it. And pray it's enough." Samuel nodded, rolling up his sleeves. He began to dig, the earth cold and unyielding beneath his hands. As he worked, Evelyn watched, hope and fear warring in her eyes. Above them, the wind howled and the shadows pressed close. But in the darkness of the cellar, a new resolve was born, a promise to break the curse no matter the cost. Samuel dug until his hands ached and his breath came in short, sharp bursts. The earth was stubborn, packed tight by years of secrets and sorrow. Each shovelful felt heavier than the last, as if the ground itself resisted giving up its burden. Evelyn knelt nearby, her face pale in the dim light, clutching the blanket tighter around her shoulders as the hole deepened. The air in the cellar seemed to grow colder, thick with a presence Samuel could not name. Shadows flickered at the edge of his vision, and the silence pressed in, broken only by the scrape of the shovel and the ragged sound of his breathing. Finally, the hole was deep enough. Samuel reached for the box. It was slick with damp and carved with symbols that seemed to writhe in the lantern's glow. He hesitated, feeling a tremor run through his body, but Evelyn's voice steadied him. "You have to do it, Samuel. It's the only way." He nodded, lowering the box into the earth. As it touched the bottom, a shudder ran through the ground, so subtle he almost thought he imagined it. He began to fill the hole, packing the dirt tight, covering the box until there was no sign it had ever been there. When it was done, Samuel sat back on his heels, sweat cooling on his brow. Evelyn let out a shaky breath, her eyes shining with relief and something like hope. "Thank you," she whispered. "No one else ever believed me. They all said it was just bad luck or my imagination. But you listened." Samuel managed a tired smile. "Sometimes, the things we can't see are the ones that matter most." They climbed the steps back into the kitchen, the first light of morning filtering through the window. The house felt different, lighter, somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. Samuel poured water into a basin, washing the dirt from his hands, while Evelyn sat at the table, her shoulders slumping with exhaustion. He made breakfast, eggs and bread, simple but warm, and they ate in silence, the tension of the night slowly ebbing away. Outside, the wind had died down, and the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if the curse had truly been broken. After breakfast, Samuel walked the property, checking the fences and the barn. The cattle grazed quietly, and the horses nickered in the corral. For the first time in weeks, there were no dead birds in the yard, no strange marks in the dust. The land felt peaceful, as if it, too, was healing. Evelyn joined him, her steps tentative at first, but growing stronger with each passing hour. She helped with the chores, her hands steady as she gathered eggs and fed the chickens. Samuel watched her, noticing the way her eyes softened when she looked at the land, the way her laughter, quiet and uncertain at first, grew bolder as the day wore on. Yes, the sun climbed higher. They sat together on the porch, sharing stories in the gentle warmth. Evelyn spoke of her family, of the generations who had tried and failed to break the curse. She told Samuel about her father's last days, how he'd grown obsessed with the box, convinced it was the source of all their misfortune. He tried to destroy it, she said, her voice trembling. But every time he burned it or threw it in the river, it came back, like it was tied to us, to the land. Samuel listened, his heart heavy with empathy. Some things can't be destroyed, only hidden or buried deep enough that they lose their power. Evelyn nodded, her gaze distant. "I just want to be free. I want to live without fear." Samuel reached for her hand, his touch gentle. "You're not alone anymore. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." The afternoon passed in a quiet peace neither of them had known in years. But as dusk fell, gather at the edge of the yard, the sudden silence of the birds, the uneasy shifting of the cattle. Evelyn felt it too. She stood at the window, watching the darkness press closer, her breath quickening. "It's not over," she whispered. "I can feel it." Samuel checked the doors and windows, making sure everything was secure. He loaded his rifle, the familiar weight comforting in his hands. "If anything comes, we'll be ready." Night fell heavy and thick, the moon hidden behind a bank of clouds. The house creaked and groaned, the wind rising once more. Samuel sat by the fire, rifle across his knees, while Evelyn dozed fitfully on the sofa. Just after midnight, a sound shattered the silence, a sharp, insistent knocking at the door. Samuel stood, heart pounding, and moved to the entryway. "Who's there?" he called, his voice steady. A voice answered, thin and reedy, barely more than a whisper. "Let me in, please." Samuel hesitated, glancing at Evelyn, who had woken and now stood behind him, her face pale. "Don't open it," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not human. The curse, it tries to trick you." The knocking grew louder, more desperate. Samuel gripped the rifle tighter, his mind racing. He remembered Evelyn's words, "Go deeper, make it quick inside." He realized now what she meant. The curse would try to get in, to find a new host, a new home, but he stepped back from the door, refusing to answer the call. The knocking turned to pounding, the voice outside growing guttural, inhuman. "Let me in. You can't hide forever." Evelyn clung to Samuel's arm, her eyes wide with terror. "Don't listen. It'll pass. It always does if you don't let it in." They waited, breath held, as the pounding continued. The walls shook, the windows rattled, but the door held firm. Finally, as dawn broke, the noise faded, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. Samuel let out a long "B." "Wreath," his body sagging with relief. Evelyn wept quietly, her tears a mix of fear and gratitude. "You did it," she whispered. "You didn't let it in. That's how the curse ends." Samuel held her close, the first rays of sunlight warming their faces. Outside, the world was still and bright, the darkness finally broken. But deep beneath the house, in the cold earth of the cellar, the box remained, buried but not forgotten. And Samuel knew that some curses never truly die. They only sleep, waiting for someone foolish enough to dig them up again. Yet for now, hope had returned to the old ranch, fragile but real. And in the light of a new day, Samuel and Evelyn dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind them. The days that followed were filled with a cautious peace. Samuel and Evelyn moved through the routines of ranch life, each task a small act of defiance against the darkness that had haunted them for so long. The cattle grazed quietly, the chickens clucked in the yard, and the sun rose and set with a gentle predictability that felt almost miraculous. Evelyn's strength returned, her cheeks regaining color, her laughter growing more frequent. She took to the land as if she'd always belonged there, learning the rhythms of the ranch, the names of the horses, the secret places where wildflowers bloomed even in the dry season. Samuel watched her with a quiet pride, grateful for her presence, for the way she filled the house with warmth and light. But the memory of that night lingered, a shadow at the edge of every bright moment. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, Samuel would wake to the sound of Evelyn's restless dreams, her voice whispering old fears into the darkness. He would sit beside her, holding her hand until the tremors faded, promising her, promising himself, that the curse was gone for good. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in streaks of gold and violet, Samuel and Evelyn sat on the porch, watching the world settle into twilight. The air was cool, scented with sage and the distant promise of rain. Evelyn broke the silence first. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked, her voice soft. Samuel considered the question, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I think we did what we could. We buried it deep, and we didn't let it in. That's more than anyone else ever managed." She nodded, but her eyes were troubled. "I keep thinking about my family, about all the years we spent running, hiding, trying to outlast something we couldn't see. I don't want to live like that anymore." Samuel reached for her hand, his grip steady and reassuring. "You don't have to. Not here. This land, it's seen its share of sorrow, but it's also a place for new beginnings. If you want to stay, you're welcome. If you want to leave, I'll help you get wherever you need to go." Evelyn looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I want to stay. I want to see what hope looks like after all this time." They sat together as the stars appeared, one by one, in the deepening sky. The world felt vast and full of possibility, the weight of the past finally lifting as the weeks passed. Samuel and Evelyn built a life together, their days shaped by hard work and quiet joy. They repaired the fences, planted a new garden, and painted the old house until it gleamed in the sunlight. The neighbors, curious at first, soon accepted Evelyn as one of their own, drawn by her kindness and her quiet strength. One afternoon, as they worked side by side in the garden, Evelyn paused, wiping sweat from her brow. "You know," she said, a smile tugging at her lips, "I never thought I'd find peace in a place like this. I always thought I'd have to keep running." Samuel set down his spade, looking at her with a gentle seriousness. "Sometimes, the only way to break a curse is to stop running, to stand your ground and make a new story." Evelyn laughed, the sound bright and free. "I like that. A new story." As the seasons changed, so did the ranch. The fields grew green, the cattle fattened, and the house filled with the sounds of life. Music, laughter, the soft murmur of voices in the evening. Samuel and Evelyn found comfort in each other, their bond deepening with every shared sunrise and storm. But the past was never far away. One night, as a storm raged outside, Evelyn woke to a familiar fear, a sense of something watching, waiting. She slipped from the bed and crept to the window, peering into the darkness. Samuel joined her, his presence a steady anchor. "What is it?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, pressing close to his side. "Just a feeling, like the curse is still out there, looking for a way back in." Samuel wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "We're stronger than it is. We prove that. And if it ever comes back, we'll face it together." Evelyn nodded, comforted by his words, by the strength of his embrace. She knew the curse might never be truly gone, that some shadows lingered, no matter how deep you buried them. But she also knew that hope was stronger than fear, and that love could outlast even the darkest night. As the storm passed, and the world grew quiet again, Samuel and Evelyn returned to bed, their hearts steady. They slept deeply, dreaming not of curses or shadows, but of bright mornings and fields of wildflowers. In the years that followed, the story of the curse faded into legend, a tale told around campfires and in the quiet corners of the local saloon. Some said the ranch was haunted, others that it was blessed. But those who knew Samuel and Evelyn saw only the truth, a place where hope had taken root, where two souls had found each other and built a life from the ashes of the past. And sometimes, when the wind was just right, you could hear laughter drifting across the fields, mingling with the song of the meadowlarks. As a sound stronger than any curse, a promise that even in the wildest, loneliest places, hope could be found. So, if you're listening to this story, wherever you are, remember, the darkness may come, but it never lasts forever. There's always a way forward, always a chance to start again. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to go deeper, not into fear, but into hope. Now, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? And what gives you hope, even when the world feels lost?